studio, hitting in the static. This ain't no bedtime story, son, it's prophetic. Encrypted signals from the shadows of the garden. We dig where the dirt got secrets, no pardon. Microphone alchemist, scriptures with a twist. Peep the frequency, seeds in the mist. We drop bars like plagues, revelations in the cadence. Broadcasting truth while they trapped in surveillance. Wisdom with a watchman's blade. Fourth watch style while your whole system fade. Blood moons, Nephilim, echoes in the pine. Sasquatch stomping through the fault lines of time. We ain't mainstream, we ancient stream. Cipher with the prophets, decode the dream. So if you tuned in, better guard your mind. It's broadcasting seeds and we breaking the design. Yeah. Straight from the broadcast studio. Hidden in the static.
Tonight we are walking into the marble heart of mystery. I'm Bennett Tanton, and this is Broadcasting Seeds. We chase the stories that do not sit still. Strange things, cryptids, conspiracies, the paranormal humming in the background of history, government cover-ups, the biblical threads that keep showing up in places that are not supposed to have them. If that is your kind of campfire, pull up a chair. Picture the Vatican at night. Tourists gone, Swiss guards posted like chess pieces, a city within a city that has survived empires, plagues, and every form of human ambition. Deep below the stone is the archive that has fed 1,000 rumors. Shelves upon shelves of the human story, recorded by the church that watched kings come and go. People call it the Vatican Secret Archives, which sounds like a Dan Brown prop. The real name, however, is the Apostolic Archive. The secret part originally meant private, not top secret. That never stopped the whispers, though. The whispers say there is more than theology on those shelves. They say the church has quietly filed strange reports from the sky for centuries. They say there are documents that cross the boundary between angels and something we now call unidentified aerial phenomena. Factual note for the grounding of our journey. Apostolic Archive is real, and it's massive. But access is limited and curated. You can read more about this mission on the Vatican Library site, which I'll put in the show notes. Step outside the archives and look up. For a long time, the Vatican has been looking up too. The church has funded astronomy for centuries, and it still does. The Vatican Observatory has facilities at Castel Gandolfo in Italy and modern telescope on Mount Graham in Arizona. That is not conspiracy. That is public record. Their own site tells the story. It raises a clean question. Why has a religious institution invested so much in the heavens for so long? The easy answer is that to know creation is to know the creator. The more adventurous answer is the one that helps make people nervous. Maybe the church wants to be first to see whatever is out there and to make sense of it before the rest of us panic. In this episode, we will sort the known from the rumored without killing the wonder. We will look at the history of the church and the stars. We will sift the testimonies of priests and insiders who spoke openly about life beyond Earth. We will map the boundary between faith and disclosure. I will not pretend every story is proven. I will not pretend that there's no good reason for privacy when belief can be fragile. But I will ask the questions that itch. Did the church collect and classify aerial anomalies before governments had acronyms for them? Do older texts describe craft in the language of the age? If contact exists, how would the oldest global institution on earth shepherd 8 billion souls through it? Here's my promise. I will keep the speculation in the proper box and label it as such. I will ground our path with sources when the facts are public. I will still let you feel the cold air that lives in the vaults of unconfirmed stories, because mystery has a job too. Mystery pulls us forward. It makes us better investigators, better thinkers, and sometimes better believers. If you are new here, welcome to the hunt. If you are a regular, you know the drill. Like the show, share it with a friend who keeps texting you grainy lights in the sky. Leave a review, because that simple act tells the algorithm not to bury strange topics like this. That is how the show grows, and it lets me keep building episodes that do not talk down to you. All right. We have our map, faith on one axis, phenomenon on the other, the Vatican at the center like a compass rose. Let us push through the bronze doors and see what light survives the archives. Section 1. The sky above the cross. When faith turned its eyes to the stars. If you think of the Vatican, your mind probably goes to marble corridors, incense, and Latin prayers echoing off the stone. But tucked between those ancient relics and oil paintings, you'll find something that feels almost out of place. A fully equipped astronomical observatory. Yeah, the Vatican's been studying the heavens longer than NASA's been a thought in anyone's head. It starts centuries ago, back when the heavens meant more than just a poetic way of saying sky. The church saw the cosmos as a divine manuscript, every planet a word, every star a punctuation mark written by God. To understand creation, they believed, was it to better understand the Creator. So they built observatories, first on the rooftops of cathedrals, then in the hills of Italy, and later all the way across the Atlantic in Arizona, where the air was clear and the light pollution is low. Now, here's where things get interesting. For an institution famous for guarding tradition, the Vatican has always had a strangely modern relationship with space. The Jesuit priests running the Vatican Observatory are trained scientists, physicists, mathematicians, and astronomers. And they've published peer-reviewed papers right alongside secular scientists. They even have a telescope on Mount Graham in Arizona called Lucifer. That's an acronym. Technically, Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. Wow, that's a mouthful. The Vatican didn't name it. That was the German team involved. But you can imagine how that one plays on conspiracy forums, right? Naming the Vatican's telescope after Lucifer, or having it named after a acronym that spells Lucifer. Pretty crazy. And the thing is, maybe it's not entirely crazy to raise an eyebrow. The church has a long memory. It survived Galileo, the Reformation, 2 world wars, and more political regimes than most countries combined. It has adapted to every scientific revolution without completely losing its grip on faith. So when the Vatican invests in looking up, you have to ask, what are they looking for? Some say it's about reconciling creation with science. Others believe it's about cataloging phenomena too strange for public eyes. Reports back to the Middle Ages have monks recording fiery shields crossing the sky, spheres of light over Rome during Mass, or apparitions that don't quite fit the angelic mold. The church documented everything, as it always does. But over time, these records got folded into the archive, labeled, filed, and forgotten by everyone except a few who still had clearance to read them. We can laugh about it. Priests with telescopes in the desert scanning for God's neighbors. But the deeper the truth is this. The church has always been preparing for the possibility that humanity isn't alone. And they've been doing it in their own language, the language of theology, not science fiction. When Vatican astronomer Father Jose Funes said in a 2008 interview that believing in extraterrestrial life does not contradict our faith, he wasn't speculating. He was laying groundwork. Quietly, carefully, almost like a priest giving a sermon to an audience not quite ready to hear it. Because if or when something from the heavens actually reveals itself, who better to translate that moment for 8 billion souls than the church that's been doing cosmic PR since the Dark Ages? It's easy to dismiss the Vatican's space obsession as eccentric, but to me, it feels more like preparation. Not for invasion, not even for disclosure, but for some revelation, the kind that shakes the boundaries between science, faith, and fear. Section 2, the Jesuit, the popes, and the phenomenon. What do they know? Let's shift gears. You've got the Vatican Observatory peering into the heavens, staffed by scientists in clerical collars. But if the first act was about curiosity, this one's about caution. The side of the church that doesn't just study mysteries, it manages them. Rumors swirl that popes have been briefed on UFOs for decades. The most repeated story traces back to Pope John the 23rd, the good pope, who supposedly had a personal encounter in 1961 at the papal summer residence. The tale goes that the pope and the secretary were walking in the gardens when a glowing disc-shaped craft descended silently nearby. From it, a being of light appeared, human-like, but not quite human. The Pope, known for his kindness and humility, supposedly dropped to his knees in awe. The being raised a hand in peace, said a few words about humanity's destiny, and vanished. Now, that story never made it to the Vatican's official record. It first surfaced through an Italian journalist years later. Unverifiable, yes, but persistent enough to become Vatican UFO lore. Then there's Monsignor Corrado Balducci, a senior Vatican theologian and exorcist who appeared on Italian television in the 1990s claiming extraterrestrial life was not only possible, but part of God's infinite creation. He even suggested that some UFO encounters could be genuine, not demonic deception, not delusion, but contact with intelligent life beyond Earth. This wasn't some fringe priest in a rural parish. Balducci was a diplomat for the Holy See and a friend of the Pope. When a man like that talks publicly about UFOs, you pay attention. Behind closed doors, the connections get even more curious. And in the aftermath of the Roswell incident in 1947, U.S. intelligence agencies reportedly briefed Vatican officials about anomalous materials and the potential implications for faith and global order. This claim surfaces from multiple Cold War researchers, including insiders who worked on Project Blue Book and Majestic 12 related archives. It's unconfirmed, but it fits the Vatican's pattern of quietly inserting itself into conversations about anything that could shake the human soul. You see, the Vatican has always walked the knife's edge between revelation and restraint. When something threatens to rewrite the human story, the Church's instinct isn't to deny it outright, it's to control the narrative. Look back through history. Heliocentrism, evolution, the Big Bang, all scientific earthquakes that the Church eventually adapted to. What if UFOs, or non-human intelligences, as they're now politely called by the Pentagon, are just the next theological update the Vatican's preparing for? Here's a fun piece of irony. Some Jesuit astronomers have joked that if aliens showed up, they'd happily baptize them. Father Guy Consolmagno, the current head of the Vatican Observatory, said as much. He called extraterrestrial life part of God's creative diversity. It's a light-hearted quote, but beneath the humor, there's a serious framework of theology of cosmic inclusion. The idea that salvation isn't limited to Earth. Now imagine for a second that the Vatican does have access to classified briefings or recovered materials, even if only secondhand through diplomatic channels. That would mean they've been quietly building a theological model for contact for decades. It explains the statements, the observatory, and the increasingly public posture towards the idea of intelligent life beyond the planet. Some say disclosure will come from Washington. Others point to the Pentagon or Silicon Valley. But here's the curveball. What if it comes from the Vatican? What if the ultimate revelation doesn't arrive via with a press conference, but with a sermon? Because when you strip away the Latin and incense, the Vatican isn't just the world's oldest religious power. It's the world's most experienced crisis manager. And if the skies ever open, it won't be politicians who calm the masses. It'll be the priests. Section 3, the vault and the veil, secrets beneath the dome. If you've ever imagined the Vatican archives as some candlelit dungeon where cardinals in crimson robes whisper over ancient alien artifacts, you're not entirely alone. Every rumor that's ever wrapped itself around the Vatican seems to end right here, beneath St. Peter's, in that labyrinth of shelving stretching for miles under the world's most sacred square mile. The truth? The Vatican Apostolic Archive really does exist, and it's enormous. 35,000 volumes cataloging over a millennium of human history, treaties, letters, trial records, papal bulls, and the sort of documents that can make or break nations. But there's also what we don't know, the collections no outsider has ever seen. Only a handful of researchers are granted access each year, and even they only get to view a sliver of what's there. The rest sits in the dark under lock and key and divine discretion. That's where speculation starts to breathe. Some claim those restricted vaults hold early accounts of angelic visitors, described in detail eerily similar to modern UFO reports. Metallic, wheels within wheels, blazing lights descending from the heavens, voices speaking in languages no one could understand. Others say the Church has safeguarded artifacts of non-human origin recovered over centuries, meteorites mistaken for divine omens, relics of fallen angels, even fragments of heavenly chariots, recorded in medieval chronicles. Then there's the Chronicon Strangiorium, a rumored section within the archive, literally the Chronicle of Strange Things. It's whispered to contain a record of celestial phenomenon dating back to Babylonian times, collected and preserved by early church scholars. No one outside the Vatican has ever confirmed its existence, but when you hear priests turned astronomers talk about cataloging the wonders of the heavens, it's hard not to wonder what old knowledge they might already have. And here's where the web tightens. According to some leaked testimonies, including claims from intelligence operatives during the 1950s and 60s, Vatican representatives were present during at least 2 international phenomenon briefings, one in Washington, the other in Geneva. Their purpose? To discuss the theological fallout of public disclosure. The Vatican, of course, never confirmed these meetings, but think about it. If governments were worried about mass panic, who better to consult than the world's spiritual counselor? The one power that's kept humanity's secrets longer than anyone else. Now, I'm not saying there's a glass case under the dome labeled Roswell exhibit, property of the Holy Seal, but consider this. The Vatican controls a narrative measured not in election cycles, but in centuries. It moves slowly, quietly, deliberately, and if it's sitting on knowledge that challenges humanity's understanding of creation, it would wait until the world was ready to hear it. Some theologians even suggest disclosure has already begun. Not with UFO press releases, but through subtle preparation, statements from the Vatican Observatory about our brothers in creation. Pope Francis hinting that we'd welcome aliens the same way we welcome any of God's children. It's all soft language, but language matters. The church knows words are seeds. You plant them early so faith can survive the shock when truth blooms. Maybe the Vatican isn't hiding extraterrestrial evidence. Maybe it's guarding the transition from myth to understanding, from fear to acceptance, from theology to cosmic theology. So what's really beneath the dome? A vault of divine history? Yes, but maybe also a mirror, one that forces us to see ourselves not as the center of the universe, but as part of something indefinitely or infinitely larger, stranger, and still unfolding. The veil doesn't always hide evil. Sometimes it hides mercy, the mercy of timing. Outro, beneath the dome and beyond the stars. So what do we do with all of this? The archives, the whispers, the sightings in the skies over Rome, the priests with telescope named Lucifer, the popes rumored to have met beings of light, and the church that's been staring into the heavens since before we could even define a galaxy. Maybe the Vatican isn't hiding flying saucers in its basements. Maybe it's hiding context, the connective tissue between the divine and the cosmic, the spiritual and the scientific. If contact has happened or will, they're probably not the villains of the story. They're the curators, the gatekeepers of wonder, the ones who understand that faith can crack under too much truth too fast. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. Whether by divine timing or human curiosity, the truth always leaks out in the places where belief and disbelief collide. And that's what Broadcasting Seeds is really about. Those cracks where the light gets in. The stories that make you question what you were taught, not because it's false, but because it's incomplete. The Vatican's UFO files, whether real, imagined, or even symbolic, remind us of something bigger, that mystery still matters, that we're not done exploring, not done asking, not done being astonished. Maybe the question isn't what the church knows. Maybe it's why we're so desperate to know before we're ready to understand. If this episode planted a seed in your mind, if it made you curious, made you think, or just made you glance up at the night sky a little longer, then do me a favor, like, share, and review the show. That's how we grow. That's how this community of thinkers, seekers, and skeptics keeps the fire going. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies, your feet on the ground, and your heart open to the impossible. I'm Bennett Tanton, and this has been Broadcasting Seeds.
And cosmic calls. The truth sleeps under cathedrals, old scrolls, lost souls, and the watchers of the ether. Faith and sign, same sky, different steeples. You can lock the vault, but you can't case the sequel. Light from the dome drips slow through the smoke, where secrets and sermons quietly provoke. They're looking up with telescopes and hope, while the rest of us still wonder what they broke. So keep your eyes open, your mind sharper than confessionals unspoken. Cause sometimes the holiest truth is broken by a whisper from the stars that never left the ocean.
Broadcasting seeds. Truth grows in strange soil. Broadcasting seeds. Truth grows in strange soil.